Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. President Biden came out and had a little discussion about the virus. Some more action from the administration, laid out his plan to expand the number of testing sites, get more access to people to get testing, because this is from the beginning, testing, quarantining, contact tracing, that kind of stuff, kind of making sure that we cut down on the number of outbreaks, social distancing, washing the hands, the masks, and oh, by the way, the vaccines. And this was basically the spiel again. The difference in this little spiel today, 500 million home testing kits are now going to be sent out. And look, I know Jen Psaki was a little snarky not too long ago. What do you want us to do? Send one to everyone's house? Yeah, I actually thought that was a pretty good idea. We should have had one for everyone available. You should be able to just go to the store and just pick them up. They should be in huge truckloads sitting and waiting for people to test, to make sure that when they go out or when they go to functions and they go around grandma, that maybe they're okay. So this is a good thing. 500 million of those tests will be available. Not quite sure yet how we're going to get them distributed, but I'm looking forward to that. He said, look, the obligation to get vaccinated is a patriotic one, and I agree. And he said, look at the last guy, the former guy, your guy, crazy people. He got vaccinated. Follow his, and not only that, got the booster as well. And this is the part that's really kind of hysterical to me, because you look at the fact that most of the anti-vax people, especially the rabid right-wing former guy folk, they're still watching Fox News, who over 90% of the people who work at Fox News, that's right, they're vaccinated. But again, don't let reality get into the alternative reality. No. Got to keep that kind of crazy. And look, the president pointed out, he said, look, we're all tired of this. He goes, I know you're tired. I really mean this. I know you're frustrated. We want this to be over, but also we have more tools than we've had before. We're ready. We're going to get through this. As we head into the holidays, I want us all to keep the faith. And I agree. He said, look, on the school front, we've got to keep the schools open. Look to science. This it's clear, they said, it's overwhelming. We know how to keep kids safe. K through 12 schools should be open. And I agree with that. He went on to say about the Omicron. He goes, how concerned should you be? He said, the answer's straightforward. If you're not fully vaccinated, you have a good reason to be concerned. And that's kind of the right response. It's the response that I expect from Joe Biden. Look, if you're not protecting yourself, duh. Yeah, you should probably be worried. Because, oh, by the way, did anyone mention the first person to die from Omicron happened, I guess, yesterday? Guy in his 50s. A young guy in his early 50s, I guess. First person, somewhere in Texas, Harris County. First person to die from the Omicron, which is supposed to be much less lethal. But, we all know the ending to the story. We all know the punchline, right? Wasn't vaccinated. So here again, one of those moments where you go, do I feel sorry for him? No, not even a little bit. Do I feel for his family? A little, because, not there, but, sad thing. The president went on to say, because Omicron has spread so easily, we'll see some fully vaccinated people get COVID, but in these cases, they are highly unlikely to get serious illnesses. He said vaccinated people who get COVID may get ill, but they're protected from severe illness and death. Now, again, like I said, the unvaccinated folk, you got something to kind of worry about. And there's part of me that goes, it's on you now. Do you? And, at the end of it, if it means we lose some along the way, I don't know. Am I upset and sad about that? Not so much. But on the virus front, feeling a little bit better. They're actually going to get some tests out because I'll tell you, I had a scare not too long ago. Just a couple of days ago, I was scrambling to find a rapid test, nowhere to be found. I did find a testing site, took a day to get the results. Fortunately, negative, but I was miserable for a couple of days. It just turns out it was my normal average upper respiratory infection. But here's the thing, had I had it, I would have done the right thing and stayed home and quarantined and not spread it to someone else. Now that I just have what I knew it probably was, just my regular upper respiratory infection, I went about life as normal. And that's how this is supposed to work. So come along with us. So good stuff. My congressman in the news, a guy who usually flies under the radar, Scott Perry, very, very, timid of the spotlight, stays under the radar. There are other crazies out there who are much, more, hey, look at me. I've always viewed Scott Perry as someone who's more dangerous because he's got the military credentials. He was a general. He has, he's a good-looking guy. Doesn't come off as incredibly crazy until he opens his mouth. And then you get the, oh my gosh, this could turn into fascist down the road bad. Evidently, he's in the news again. And I can't wait for some of it to come out because January 6th was a huge day. Another January 6th criminal rioter was sentenced to 46 months for assaulting a police officer. We saw that coming. The guy's name's Devlin Thompson. He threw a speaker. I guess at a police officer. Missed, hit one of his fellow criminal rioters, injured him. But also, according to reports, he did hit a policeman with a metal baton. That got him 46 months. He pled guilty earlier in the year. But today, Judgment Day. And I still don't think 46 months is enough. The judge, Royce Lamberth, federal district court in Washington, D.C., said that Thompson deserved credit for his early cooperation because evidently singing like a jaybird as soon as he got caught because, hey, got to save my own skin. But the judge couldn't see a justification for going below the sentencing guidelines. And that, the violence that happened on that day was, according to him, such a blatant disregard to the institution. And yeah, that's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to tear it down. Seems pretty simple to me. Now, he's the second January 6th rioter to be sentenced as a felony for assaulting a police officer. You may remember last week, I think it was, you had the guy, Robert Palmer, 63 months for hitting a police officer with a fire extinguisher. Still don't think that was enough. There are still another 140 people like these two dimwits who are facing felony charges, the same charges, and we'll see what they get. But as I said, my congressman, at the heart of this, and this is the part that I have a problem with, he's Mr. Law and Order. Remember, these are the folks who tell you that they're the good, God-fearing Christian folk. They're the law and order. They're we need the 10 Commandments plastered on every wall. And yet when it comes to, I don't know, being that good God-fearing Christian, honest, following the law, not so much. As my congressman, Scott Perry, the Republican from here in central Pennsylvania, has refused to cooperate with the January 6th committee, even though they have asked, hey, we want to know what the communications that you were having. Did you have anything to do with... And this is one of those things where, I tell my kids this all the time. And I say, look, if I'm asking you a question, I already know the answer. I'm just waiting for you to lie. See, this is simple. The FBI does this masterfully. They wouldn't ask you the question if they didn't have the answer, if they didn't already know the direction that you're going. So Scott, if you're listening, they probably already know what's on your signal. And interestingly enough, you used something that was encrypted so no one could see. Kind of makes you wonder, what were you hiding? And again, as a constituent, I want to know these things. I think it's important to know that if my representative was involved in some kind of an attempt to overthrow my government. I think it's extremely important. But again, these are the law and order and the Constitution folks. These are the people who during the Tea Party years were waving those pocket constitutions like they had actually read them. Now, Scott tweeted out today, and did this by Twitter. I guess that's very Republican of him. He said in the first tweet, "I stand with immense respect for our Constitution, the rule of law, and the America I represent who know, the Americans that I represent who know that this entity is illegitimate and not duly constituted under the rules of the U.S. House of Representatives." Yeah, it was. The reason that there aren't Republicans on there is you guys chose not to play. You chose to go, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And there are 2 Republicans on there. Oops, forgot about that one. He goes on to say, "I declined this entity's request and will continue to fight the failures of the radical left who desperately seek distraction from their abject failures of crushing inflation, a humiliating surrender in Afghanistan, and a horrendous crisis that they created at our border." This, for people who have children, is known as deflection. This is when you know one of the children broke the lamp, and you ask that child, "Did you break the lamp?" And they go, but the other one did something else. This is known as deflection. Just kind of thrown out there. And I love the 2-year-old kind of, but over there, so that maybe you won't look at them. No, Scott, we're looking at you. Your treason and your culpability in all this will come to light. It has to come to light. And this is the infuriating thing of this, is that they think that they're going to get away with it. And there's supporters that will give them the pass. Even if Scott Perry came out and said, yeah, I did have a hand in getting the new attorney general put into place. I did have a hand in getting that person put in there, and knew that person would go along with the plan, the PowerPoint. I'm sorry. I don't know that it was really a plan, it's a PowerPoint. And knowing that this person would go along, their constituents would still, he was fighting for us. The Constitution, never mind that. It's all about power and winning. And the weird thing to me, and I was thinking about this today, how do you have a discussion, a debate? How do you have a conversation with people who are habitual liars, cheaters, and thieves? With people who hold nothing dear but power, especially when they know that they're liars, cheats, and thieves, and that they believe you're as bad as they are, so that there are no facts, there's no reality, there's nothing sacred, there's nothing other than greed and power and selfishness. The individual, me, I want mine. And no depth of depravity, no insanity, no depths of craziness, no assaults on our institutions will change their minds. This is where we are with the current Republican Party, and they think everyone is as evil and as maniacal as they are in their quest for pure power. And I point to this video. Over the weekend, they had a giant con orgy in Arizona, where all of the faithful got together to have their I Hate Joe Biden rally. And one of the Fox people, this Jesse Waters, was talking about Anthony Fauci. And the thing that bothers me is they use this language that it's coded language, but they're saying what they really want to say, only it gives them the out of going, well, I didn't really mean that. And well, I guess I got to just play the clip, because this is the part that's really quite frustrating to me. This is good old Jesse Waters at the Turning Point USA conference.
Now you're going for the kill shot. The kill shot with an ambush, deadly, because he doesn't see it coming. This is when you say, Dr. Fauci, you funded risky research at a sloppy Chinese lab, the same lab that sprung this pandemic on the world. You know why people don't trust you, don't you? Boom! He is dead. He is dead. He's done. Now, how you do that? 30 seconds. That's all you need. 30 seconds. Now, you get that footage to us. You get it to Fox. You get it to Human Events. You get it to Breitbart. You get it to Daily Caller. You get it through the Turning Point pipeline. Imagine Tucker Carlson teases out of the A block. Coming up. Brave college student confronts Lord Fauci at dinner. Exclusive footage. Right back. Get us that.
Yeah, get them, because that's what they want. They need that. And what's interesting to me is I love how he ties this together, because they're all working together. All of those organizations for one goal. And that's to tear down Dr. Fauci and any response to the virus or any of that. But the part about we're going to go for the kill shot, that's not about, we're going to get a video. He really wants people to be violent. He is encouraging those people who brought Kyle Rittenhouse out and said he was their hero for killing people in the streets. This is all part of the propaganda and the rhetoric that the right has been getting away with for years. And yeah, they want the kill shot. They want violence in the streets. And this is the kind of the problem that we have going on, because there is a party in this country who doesn't care about the rule of law, doesn't care about institutions, doesn't care about this country at all. All they care about is their unadulterated power, themselves. And you've got mouthpieces like that who are going to say and do anything to feed the outrage candy to the masses, in the hopes that some dimwit, some future, Rittenhouse-esque person may do just that and give him his wet dream list. We're in scary times, folks, and these are the people who are taking us down that path. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. When we come back, to talk to Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro about some of the craziness that's going on here in our state and much more. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the Anaconda Copper Company instituted its rustling card system at its mines in Butte, Montana. The company used the rustling cards in two ways. First, as a work permit, and then as a way to keep track of miners. A miner looking for work would first have to apply for a card. Miners had to present information about citizenship status, English literacy skills, work history, and 2 years of employer references. Once the card was approved, the miners would then be allowed to apply for work. The Butte Miners Union charged that it was the company's way of blacklisting those who had quit, been fired, or known as union militants. By 1917, the Metal Mine Workers Union and the IWW added that the company was looking to nip agitation in the bud. They alleged employers were holding onto cards or denying them altogether for no reason. According to historian Paul Brissenden, both unions maintained the company was looking to, quote, punish those who were at one time active in the socialist administration of Butte Mayor Lewis J. Duncan, to prevent the Socialist Party from again securing a foothold in Butte, to strengthen the hands of the more conservative unions, and to curb the industrial unionism of the IWW and Metal Mine Workers Union. The company asserted its right to keep out its enemies out of the mines, alleging they presented a danger to mine safety. But the unions shot back, stating the blacklist meant the hiring of untrained, inexperienced workers who presented the real danger. Brissenden notes that many union radicals continued to work in the mines despite the card system. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Things about to get really interesting here in Pennsylvania. First, we had the reality star Dr. Oz jump into the Senate race. And soon we could have the state senator who was a loud voice at the January 6th insurrection, held that super spreader event at Gettysburg, if you remember that, where they had that, whatever that was, of people with all these allegations and all of these really bizarre claims that nobody bothered to take into a courtroom. And of course, then off to the Trump White House to buddy up there. And now the more we're finding out, I got to start questioning what beyond that. So for him to jump into the governor's race, wow, it's going to get really entertaining. And it's being reported that Doug Mastriano, the guy who's going to jump into this, is anti-establishment. And I guess if, heading off an insurrection and destroying democracy, I guess if that's anti-establishment, then he's our guy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, what we really need to be talking about in 2022 and the kind of governor that we need going forward. I've asked Josh Shapiro to come talk with us. Josh is the current Attorney General here in Pennsylvania, also a candidate for governor in 2022. Josh, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm looking at, let's start with Doug Mastriano, because I got to get to this guy. Goes to the January 6th thing, has people go with him, big cheerleader for what was going on, has that bizarre court super spreader event thing that he did. This guy, to me, is really kind of dangerous in that truth doesn't seem to matter. Reality just doesn't seem to matter.
Well, he is dangerous, and he's also the modern day Republican Party, and he's also by far the leading candidate for governor in a field of, I think last time I checked, about 14 Republican candidates. The polling shows him way ahead. The modern day Republican Party is built on the big lie. It's built on trying to undermine reproductive rights and worker rights and civil rights in this Commonwealth. And there couldn't be more of a clear distinction between me and them. And I think it should be, seared in everyone's mind just how high stakes this next governor's race is here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had someone interview me not too long ago, and they said, what's your number one issue, in Pennsylvania and across the country? And I said, preserving democracy in society and in the workplace. If we lose the right to vote, if every person doesn't have access to that ballot box, game over. Everything else doesn't matter.
Our democracy is indeed under attack. And Rick, it's been under attack for a couple of years now. It started in early 2020, maybe even a little bit before that, with the lies coming from the former president, then amplified by his enablers. It led to litigation. And by the way, Rick, more than 40 times here in Pennsylvania, they sued us to make it harder for people to vote. By the way, every time they went to court, they lost and we won, and we protected the right to vote here in the Commonwealth. But they didn't stop there. They kept on lying. And that led to the violent insurrection on January 6th that the leading Republican candidate for governor participated in. And then they took their fight from our nation's capital to state capitals across this country to pass voter suppression bills and these sham audits. We saw it in Texas, in Georgia, and but for the veto pen of our governor here in Pennsylvania, those same voter suppression laws would pass here. That is what's going to be on the ballot going forward in 2022. A clear choice between someone like me, who's going to protect every legal eligible voter, and on the other side, folks who want to suppress the vote, make it harder for people to have their voices heard in our democracy. So when you say this is sort of central or the top thing on your mind, I think it is the foundation upon which everything else is addressed, from worker rights to healthcare to how we educate our kids. If we have voter suppression laws in place in Pennsylvania that are removing people from the conversation about our democracy, it makes it harder to come up with solutions that include everyone.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and the reason I point to Mastriano is, they had that thing in Gettysburg where, you had all these people making these fantastical claims. Right. I saw this and this happened, and yet none of them actually took those claims into a court of law. Now you're someone, you've fought every step of the way in this. if this stuff actually happened, and look, I get it every day. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Take it into a court of law. That's where you fight this stuff, not in some blog, not some bizarre website. Take it into a court, and that's how I know it's a lie, and that's how I know it's not true, because at least they've got the integrity not to lie in court, I guess, for now.
Some of them do, and you are absolutely right. I mean, look, they put forth these ridiculous, bogus claims that have been refuted. Here's the truth: we had a free and fair, safe and secure election that Joe Biden won by about 80,000 votes. It's also really important to note that there were less than a handful of claims of voter fraud. They were all prosecuted. And Rick, they were all trying to cast an extra vote for Donald Trump, not even for Joe Biden. Even so, it was immaterial to the overall outcome. But, you know, it is true that these guys lied in their press releases. But when you show up in a court of law, and we were there over 40 times battling against them and winning every single time, you can't lie in court. And the judges, both Republican and Democrat, pointed out those lies and ruled against them every time. The few lawyers that did go to court, like Rudy Giuliani, and lie in court, well, I held them accountable and got sanctions against them. In the case of Giuliani, got his law license revoked. You're not allowed to go in court and lie. It's a shame that they lie in the press releases and the press conferences. You certainly can't do that in court.
Yeah, good on you. And it's what we've needed in this state. And thank goodness you have been the Attorney General fighting these bogus claims every step of the way. And now, look, I know you're running for governor. This is one of those things where I've said from the beginning, if there is a Republican elected governor in 2022, democracy in this state's over. Immediately, they pass no rights at work. Immediately, all of the Alabama, Texas kind of legislation that has been crippling those states is coming here. And I get from people going, no, Rick, you're hyperbolic. You're going too far. And I don't think so, Josh. I think every bit of that, from passing no rights at work right day one, to the same crazy anti-abortion laws, to the anti-democracy laws, the voter suppression stuff, I think all of it comes on day one. I don't even think there's a debate.
Without question, let's just examine the facts here. Let's take those three examples. First, let's talk about reproductive rights. The Texas law that limits abortion after 6 weeks and actually gives individual citizens the ability to bring lawsuits. The folks running against me have either said they're for it, or they've gone a step further and they've sponsored or co-sponsored that legislation. Let's talk about voter suppression. The kinds of laws that have been passed in Texas and in Georgia, these individuals support here in Pennsylvania. But for the veto pen of our governor, they'd be law here. And when it comes to right to work, they've all been firm in their opposition to labor unions and have said that they're for right to work. So this isn't hypothetical. This isn't hyperbolic. This is the reality of who they are. And there is a clear contrast. All of those bad things I just cited, I would veto those bills if they reach my desk. And again, it's not so much an if, but a when, because those bills have been put on Governor Wolf's desk and he's been forced to veto them. We can't lose that veto pen, and we know what we're getting on the other side: undermining worker rights, undermining reproductive rights, and undermining voting rights.
I mean, the hat trick of horrible, to use a hockey analogy. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, candidate for 2020 governor's spot here. You can check out his website, joshshapiro.org. Now, as Attorney General, you've been, for workers especially, you've been out there fighting the fight, especially on the wage front, the wage theft front, something that I've been talking about for years. We need to be much more aggressive in holding employers accountable. This is something that you've actually taken and moved forward in a way that I think is really important. And I think people should know, because I don't think it gets reported on enough anywhere.
You know, Rick, back in 2015 and 2016, when I was running for Attorney General, I appeared on your program and I talked about the need to deal with wage theft and worker misclassification. That's where workers are put to work and basically misclassified so that their wages can be taken from them by greedy corporate executives. Well, when I became Attorney General, I fulfilled the commitment I made during the campaign to start a fair labor section in my office so that we could go out and police bad employers and protect workers. And now, 5 years later, let's look at the results. There are CEOs from Pennsylvania who ripped off workers, who are going to jail for ripping off workers because of cases we brought. Let me give you another example. There's a company in central Pennsylvania known as Hawbaker, one of the largest companies in the Commonwealth. Over a 5-year period of time, they did more than $1 billion. That's a B, Rick, more than $1 billion worth of road work in the Commonwealth. And while they were doing that road work, they were required to pay their workers something known as prevailing wage. Well, they didn't pay them their full prevailing wage. Instead, the corporate executives skimmed money off the top and kept it for themselves and took it away from the people who were doing the backbreaking work on Pennsylvania roadways. We looked into it. We investigated. We took criminal action here and filed criminal charges in what became the largest Davis-Bacon prevailing wage theft case in the history of the United States of America. And just last week, actually 2 weeks ago now, Rick, we got every single worker their money back. $21 million was stolen from these workers. We filed these criminal charges against the company, and we got the people their money back. That's the kind of work we're proud of in the AG's office. We got to stand with workers here in this Commonwealth, and I always have.
No, and that's the important part. And you talk about prevailing wage, you talk about the right to join and form unions, something that Republicans, the party as a whole, this is their platform. They are anti-union, they're anti-prevailing wage, they're anti-worker. And they don't seem to have a problem when someone gets ripped off. In fact, you kind of look at the laws and the things that they pursue, it kind of encourages the kind of behavior that we see, which again is another reason why I have no idea how a working person votes for a Republican in this day and age.
I'll just tell you, part of their playbook is to undermine unions. And I said when I announced my candidacy on the banks of the river in Pittsburgh, I said not only would I continue the work I've done as Attorney General to protect the rights of workers to organize, I want to expand union membership in Pennsylvania, expand the opportunities for all Pennsylvanians to join a union. When we do that, we can lift up wages, we can lift up the kind of benefits people get, and we can create safer environments for people to go to work in. That's what's going to help grow our economy.
And more importantly, the other side of this as well is the big case that you won, the thousands of workers who are going to get their back pay. That never happens if those workers have a union. They don't get cheated to begin with, so we don't have to go after bad employers. You hold them accountable right from the start, which I think is better for everybody. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania Attorney General, candidate for governor here in 2022. Check out the website, joshshapiro.org. We'll get links out on social media on how you can do that. I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on. We got this big virus. My favorite saying lately has been, we're going into a viral blizzard. Omicron has taken over all of things right now. We've had our first death. It's going to get worse, and yet at every turn I look at what's going on in my state here in Pennsylvania and across the country, and you've got the Republican Party who's trying to handcuff any opportunity for government to deal with this. As governor, how would you handle this? I mean, I look at Tom Wolf. He did what he had to do. The mask mandate in school seemed to me a no-brainer. Our courts overturned that, and probably rightly so based on the law. But what do you do when you have one party who's hell-bent on, well, death and destruction?
Yeah, the other side really have been obstructionists. And I can't understand that with the amount of death we've seen in this country, over 800,000 Americans dying as a result of this horrible pandemic, that the other side wouldn't want to come together and work in a constructive manner to keep people safe, to do things that don't restrict our freedom, but instead promote science and understanding and help people empower themselves to be healthy. Let me tell you what we've done in the Attorney General's office. And this is, I think, the model for what we need to do across government, across the Commonwealth. I've got about 1,000 employees in my office from all across Pennsylvania, people who come from all different walks of life. And as soon as this pandemic reached the Commonwealth back in March of 2020, we began talking to them regularly, trying to educate them on what this was all about, ways they could stay safe, giving them the tools they needed to be able to run their daily lives, care for their families, do their work, whatever the case may be. And then when the vaccines came out, we brought in medical experts from all different, walks of life to try and educate and empower our workforce to make the decisions they needed to make to keep themselves healthy. I'm really proud of the fact that we have essentially a 100% vaccination rate. We're in the 90s, and the people who haven't been vaccinated yet have appropriate reasons for not doing that. As a result of that, that allowed us to get back in the office before many companies could. It allowed us to continue to meet our mark and meet our mission for the good people of Pennsylvania. Education and empowerment, defeating the lies and the noise that are coming out from the other side, meeting their BS with real facts and real science, and making people and families feel empowered. Look, I want to keep businesses open. I want to keep workers working. I definitely want to keep our schools open. And the way we do that is through education, empowerment, and helping people make smart decisions and smart choices.
Do you see any scenario where we go back to a shutdown? Do you see any scenario where something like that happens?
Look, certainly not on my watch. I can't speak for Governor Wolf. He can only speak for himself. That's not the answer. The answer is getting people vaccinated. The answer is showing up in communities, getting people access to the science and the data that they need to be able to make this smart choice for themselves so that they and their families can be healthy.
I guess the last question I've got for you, because I don't know why you would want to jump into this mess given the craziness that we see at the Capitol and with this General Assembly, because you know from day one that you're going to get no help from the other side. How are you going to deal with the divide that we have? And I guess I ask this all the time, and it's kind of rhetorical. How are you going to deal with that divide that we have in this state, given the fact that the Republicans control the General Assembly?
Look, I'm in this because I believe each and every one of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game, and to do our part. And right now, the stakes could not be higher. And so I want to be in the arena, doing my part to try and better people's lives and protect their interests and their rights, as we talked about here earlier on the program, Rick. Look, I've got a long track record of bringing Republicans and Democrats together to get things done. I've got a long track record of taking on really big fights to help people. Just go ask anybody in Western Pennsylvania, 1.9 million Pennsylvanians to be exact, who are about to lose access to their health care because Highmark and UPMC couldn't get along. We brought those two sides together and preserved and protected people's health care.
Great
so
stuff.
I'm going to bring people together. I'm going to take on these big fights. I'm going to lead the Commonwealth in a direction that lifts everybody up.
Good stuff, Josh. I appreciate the time. I wish you the best. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
I sure will, Rick. Thanks so much for having me. Stay safe. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Good stuff. Thanks, Josh Shapiro, Attorney General. Make sure you check out the website, joshshapiro.org. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top. That was the day that Red Scare deportations began. 249 radicals, including anarcho-feminist Emma Goldman, were packed onto the USS Buford and deported to Russia. The year of 1919 had seen massive social convulsions. The Seattle General Strike had kicked off the year. It was followed by coal strikes and steel strikes, bombings and race riots. There were increasing fears of communist ideas and influences in the wake of the Bolshevik Revolution. These events touched off a draconian response by the U.S. federal government. Together with the young J. Edgar Hoover, Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer conducted mass raids and arrests of more than 1,000 suspected working-class radicals. The Department of Labor agreed that proclaimed membership in the Union of Russian Workers was a deportable offense. The ship set sail and docked in Finland, where trains transported the deportees into the Soviet Union. The vast majority of those deported had no criminal records and had never participated in any acts of terrorism. They were expelled for speaking out about their political opinions. According to Regan Schmidt, author of Red Scare, FBI, and the Origins of Anti-Communism in the United States, employers' associations fueled the anti-radical climate. They were engaged in an intense open-shop counterattack against post-war organizing campaigns and strike activity. The main goal was to discredit unions as subversive, Bolshevistic, and alien to basic American values. Donning the name The American Plan, closed shops were referred to as Sovietism in disguise, and propaganda campaigns were waged to ensure blacklists, internal union dissension, yellow dog contracts, and strike breaking.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, got an email during the break that I wanted to share. Bonnie in St. Paul, listening on KTNF AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, chimes in. She said, I love your parenting practice with your kids. I do the same thing, she said. To reiterate your point, the AP reported, quote, in a letter to Perry on Monday night, Mississippi Representative Benny Thompson, the Democratic chairman of the panel, said the panel had received evidence from multiple witnesses, including then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and then acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, that Perry had an important role in the efforts to install Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark as acting Attorney General. She said, you are so right that there is no depth. These people will not stoop. And as I said, look, when I go with my kids, if I ask you a question, I already know the answer. And I said the same thing about Perry. They already know you're just digging deeper, and here's a shovel. Keep going. And here to share some thoughts on, how bad could this be, or how good could it be for democracy to pull this guy out into the light and let people know who I believe he's always been. I've asked Eugene DePasquale to come talk with us. Eugene's a former auditor general here in Pennsylvania, also a state representative. He ran against Perry in the last election, and so close. Maybe we can get him to run again this time around. Eugene, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been a little while, but glad to be back on.
So I'm looking at this, and like I said at the beginning, like any parent, you know your kids did something wrong. You don't ask a question unless you know the answer. And I think the committee knows or has a pretty good suspicion Perry doing the thing that the former guy would want him to do.
Let's be very clear about this. They're asking a sitting member of Congress in the club they're all in to basically come testify. That means that they know it's bad, because this is a big step and they know it's bad. And we now know from basic look, I called Scott Perry to congratulate him 2 days after the election when the mail-in votes were making it close, but I just wasn't going to get over the hump. And that Thursday night, when I called him, he was already at a Stop the Steal rally. This thing was set in motion months before the election. He was a key orchestrator. He was in the Oval Office January 5th. He's right in the middle of this thing. He tried to get Jeffrey Clark to take over as Attorney General because he was going to do the bidding of himself and Trump when it came to trying to overthrow the election that Joe Biden clearly won. So he is clearly in the middle of all of this. And now the committee already knows this. They basically want to give him a chance to give some explanations, which I don't think he has the courage to do.
No, I don't think so either. But I loved his explanation. First, he questions the legitimacy of the committee, which since they chose not to participate, that doesn't make it illegitimate.
Right,
and then the massive deflection of, them, like a child would do when you caught him doing something wrong. They'll go, but the other one did this. That's kind of what I got the whole vibe from this.
It's by the way, it's not just him. It's their whole this extremist caucus that he's now chairing. Some people call it the Freedom Caucus. I call it the Extremist Caucus. All they want to do now in public life is literally attack liberals. That's all they want to do. They don't want to govern. This is all about calling people names, race baiting, trying to overthrow elections because they don't believe in democracy. It never ends with this crowd. And despite the better face he may put on this, as opposed to the crackpots like the guy with the big hair in Florida, Matt Gaetz, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, the one that those goofballs, he's just a more polished image of all of them.
Yeah. No, and he's scary. And what's really frightening to me, Eugene, is the fact that Pennsylvania seems to be at the heart of all of this kind of craziness. Where in the past you'd go, you've got those extremists, but that's not here. Right now, insanity has taken over our state house and our state senate, and we're exporting it on the national level. That's what's frightening to me.
Look, I think you had Josh Shapiro on right before, and we all hope, I certainly hope that my dear friend Josh Shapiro becomes governor. This Mastriano guy is maybe just a balder-headed version of Perry. I mean, this is, we used to be the state of like the Arlen Specter, John Hines wing of the Republican Party. That's not who's the Republican Party of Pennsylvania anymore. I had my disagreements with Tom Ridge, but he was, in the mainstream of American political thought. That's not their party in Pennsylvania anymore.
He was somewhere near the middle of the road. These folks are extremists, and I look at Perry's treason caucus is what I call it.
Right.
I think that it's not just about making liberals cry and drinking liberal tears and going after the libtards. I think it's much more nefarious and much more dangerous. I see these people, and I'm going to say it right out, I see these people as fascists who want to destroy democracy, and they want one person rule. And right now it's the former guy, and that's not who we are as a country, and it's not who the Republican Party used to be. That's the part that gets me.
Yeah, and look, obviously, I've had my fair share of reaching out to at least some elements of the Republican Party. You have to, just to see who's going to be part of the coalition of the willing to save our democracy. I'd say it's about 25% of Republicans in our region, and I think even it cuts around across the country this way, that are very disturbed by this. But Trump has taken over a very healthy portion of Republicans, and Scott Perry is right there. I think the guy is I've jokingly said he's Niedermeyer from Animal House, but I mean, this is, when you look at his behavior, he is clearly now utilizing all his skills in life to work with Trump to try to overthrow our democracy. And
now, look, I don't want to give Trump too much credit. The Republican Party was marching down they were goose-stepping down this direction for a very long time. I actually think Bannon was probably the real orchestrator and Trump was just the messenger. But I think Bannon was the real strategy guy there. Right. I think this has been going on for a long time. The moneyed interests of this country have been moving us towards this because they don't want democracy. They don't want labor unions. They don't want women to have choice. They don't want life, liberty, pursuit of happiness for everyone, just themselves. They want, and they'll be honest with you, Eugene, and you know this as well as anyone. They're the original intent crowds. We want the blacks back in the fields, the gays in the closets, and women in the kitchen. That's the world that they want us to take us back to.
Scott Perry said point blank, "I don't care about women's health. I already had my kids." That came out of his mouth.
So how do we get you to jump in the middle of this? How do we get you to throw your hat in the ring and take this guy on? Because I don't know there's anyone in this area that's going to be able to do that.
Give me a fair map and we'll get him out of there.
And this is where it comes back to, I hear this across the country. Last night we were talking about, what's going on in Ohio, how Ohio's become a crazy state. And that, if only for Pennsylvania on the abortion front, there's nowhere else for women to go. But if this next election goes to a Republican like Mastriano, that's not even happening.
No, what is going to be at stake, and I know sometimes you keep having these debates, but it's because it's true. The next election, 22 and 24, this is, I think, for all the Marlboros, for our democracy, women's health, rights of the gay and lesbian community. These are all on the ballot in the next two cycles here.
Yeah. Now, there's.
And by the way, if a guy like Mastriano gets in, or even any of these Republicans, I think Pennsylvania, they'll move immediately to make Pennsylvania right to work for less state.
I've said this 2 years ago. They will pass right to work in this state faster than Kentucky, and it'll make Kentucky have whiplash. And Kentucky exactly did a special meeting 9 a.m. on the first day they could to pass it. That's how fast it will happen here.
Mastriano will do it, or any of them. I don't even. Maybe there's an exception, but whoever the exception is probably can't get elected right now on a Republican side. But if Josh isn't the governor, before the first week of the legislature is out, Pennsylvania will be a right-to-work state.
Now you've been in politics a long time. I've known you, got to be going on now 15 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is. Can you imagine us in this? When you started, could you imagine being in the position where we're in, where you've got a reality star running for Senate, in Dr. Oz, and a crazy person who was part of trying to overthrow our government, about to run for Senate or for governor? Could you imagine that being reality in this state?
No, and also let this sink in. Like, Scott Perry is the lead Republican right now of national news in the Pennsylvania congressional delegation, and that national news is because he's now known as the orchestrator of trying to overthrow the election. That's the Pennsylvania Republican Party right now.
Yeah, but I look at Mastriano again. I go back to him. He had that super spreader event in Gettysburg, where they brought in just the most colorful characters to tell the most fanciful tales of all of this stuff that they knew and they saw, and yet none of those people said, put their hand on the Bible and said, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. They didn't bother to go to court with it. It was just all, well, that kind of show that, well, it's a reality game.
By the way, this has become the MO right now. In 2011, when we were in the minority, there was a state government hearing where there was this woman that came in to testify that there was a bus full of, she called them illegals, undocumented people driving all throughout Pennsylvania, voting in all these precincts in Bradford County and Tioga. And I asked a question I thought it was a fair question. I said, I drove from York to Harrisburg to come up for this hearing as a state rep. And it took me an hour and a half because of traffic on 83. You're telling me this bus went all over Pennsylvania, casting all these votes, and they never once got a flat tire, never got stuck in traffic? I can't drive 40 minutes without getting stuck in traffic in Pennsylvania. Nobody noticed that this bus of New Yorkers got off in Towanda and started voting. But the point is, as much as that seemed like fantasy land and it happened, this is their MO now. They can never concede they lost an election.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it was a magic bus.
Maybe.
I mean, that's all I can come up with. So the question I have for, someone like you who has been around a long time, how do we pull this back? I mean, I know a lot of people right now are a little despaired, especially what's going on the national level with not getting the Build Back Better plan pushed through and the infighting that seems to be going there. What's the way forward from somebody who I view as, I've always viewed you as a moderate, level-headed Democrat. How do we pull back to somewhere near sane?
No, I look, first of all, you can't quit, right? You got to stay in the fight. It's tough right now. I was disappointed with what Joe Manchin did. But what you got to do is you got to control what you can control. That was sort of what my college football coach said. Control what you can control. There's things I can control, things I can't control when I was playing football. There's things I can't control in politics, things I can control. What can we control? We got a good candidate for governor. We're going to have a competitive primary for Senate. Once we get a nominee there, let's focus on winning those elections and winning back state legislative, state Senate seats, defeating people like Scott Perry and some of these other wackadoodles that we have, people that are clearly extremists. Let's win these races, the races we can have impact on. And then in our own way, we're going to help preserve our democracy and move our state and country forward. That's how you do it. We can all have our moments where we're belly aching, and I've had my moments of howling the moon too. Believe me, I lost to Scott Perry. You think there aren't nights that I'm howling at the moon? But at the end of the day, you got to dust yourself off and get back in the fight.
Yeah. Now, is it worth the time to try and reach out to Republicans in this moment? Because I hear people saying all the time, there've got to be some sane Republicans left. And I go, I don't know that to be true, because I look at the last election where, Joe Biden got, more votes, but Republicans got more votes too. And in record numbers on both sides. So that tells me that we're pretty well split down the middle.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think that Pennsylvania itself, we are very much split. And I think there's pretty big chunks of the state that are split too. I think you do have to try to do both. I do think we have to do a better job of reaching out to our core bases and do a better job on turnout. One thing it certainly impacted my race is the Republicans were much better at voter turnout. They kept registering voters. We stopped going door to door. That was a mistake. There were some precincts that Republicans turned out at 90%. We were in the mid 60s in some areas, which historically isn't bad, but we've got to do better on that. And then we do have to find, so while we're doing that, look, there are some Republicans out there. It is not obviously a majority of them, but there are some that are concerned about what is happening with our democracy. We've got to communicate with them and try to convince them to be part of this coalition.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary times. And ultimately, voting rights to me, as I said earlier, someone asked me what I think the most important thing is. And right now, voting rights more than anything, because we've seen in states across this country, Republicans where they have control, they have put up all kinds of barriers to stop people from being able to vote. And Pennsylvania would be right in line with that, with a Republican General Assembly and a Republican governor. So this could be the last free and fair election we get. So go vote.
So, and I'm maybe this is my wish list here. I would get rid of the filibuster and make the Voting Rights Act the first thing I would do. Because is Build Back Better important? Yes, absolutely. But if we don't have a democracy, that's not going to matter as much. So we've got the Voting Rights Act would be the first order of business if I were king for a day.
No, it has to be. And look, the filibuster is something I've been screaming about for years, that I think it goes away, because I've always said the Senate is the place where good ideas go to die, where any progress for the working class of this country goes to die, because, well, they're easier to control.
Look, I would be, and this is a day that can't happen, I would be okay with they used it if it was the idea of we're going to use it just to make sure the minority has a chance to have a say on things, to review the bills, so you're not jamming everything through in 24 hours. But it's basically making sure that you have to have a supermajority of senators to support something, which means literally nothing can happen anymore. That is not how we're supposed to be running our country.
No, I've said from the beginning, bring Mr. Smith back, put him in Washington. I'm all in favor of a talking filibuster. If it's that important, everything stops. Get your water bottle, get your whatever, and tell me why you're against the minimum wage increase. Tell me why you're against children getting the $250 a month that has cut childhood poverty in half in this country. Tell me why you're against those things, and maybe we can have a debate and actually do this the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, you're right. If someone got up there and they were willing to stand for 24 hours and talk about their concerns with a bill, hey, okay, more power to them. May disagree, but at least they've got the right to do that. That is something that, again, it doesn't happen that often, but the system we have today is just totally broken.
So I'm gonna make one more plea. Got to get you running. The website still active, EugeneForCongress.com. That's still something
that is still active. And then at DePasquale DePasquale PA is my Twitter handle. And
we'll make sure we get links out on social media. Folks can kind of nudge you in that direction, because I think in this moment, with Perry where he's at, we need somebody out there presenting the right side. Eugene, always great talking with you. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts with us down the road.
You got it, Rick. Thanks so much. Have a great holiday season, and see you in the new year, my friend.
Good stuff. Thank you so much, Eugene DePasquale. Again, like he said, EugeneForCongress.com, the website. Check that out. Also follow him on Twitter, DePasquale PA. We'll get links out. You can take a look at it. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1907. At 3:45 that afternoon, the Chilean military opened machine gun fire on a school occupied by striking workers. It's estimated that between 1,000 and 3,000 people died that day in what came to be known as the Santa Maria School Massacre. The early 20th century was a time of great wealth disparity in Chile. Dock workers in the northern city of Iquique went on strike. These workers mostly loaded saltpeter into ships for transport. Saltpeter is a key ingredient in gunpowder. Soon, workers from the nearby saltpeter flats joined the strike. The saltpeter in Chile was controlled mostly by foreign corporations, predominantly British. It was one of the most lucrative Chilean exports. As part of the work action, the strikers occupied the Santa Maria School in Iquique. Chilean President Pedro Montt ordered the strikers be driven out of the city. 400 armed soldiers encircled the workers. They rained machine gun fire on the strikers. Among the dead were women and children, family members of those on strike. The bodies were buried in a mass grave. The exact number of those killed that day is still unknown. In 2007, multiple memorial ceremonies were held in Chile to remember the tragedy. Juan Manuel Diaz, an officer of the United Federation of Workers, the largest trade union in the country, said, "The mass killing was a shameful thing that the Chilean government covered up for a very long time." One way that the memory of the massacre was preserved was through song. In 1969, Luis Advis wrote this cantata to tell the story.
Señoras y señores, venimos a contar aquello que la
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So to pick up where we were with Eugene a moment ago, Chuck Schumer has come out and said that in the new year, they're going to be looking to do something on voting rights. And if they got to do something with the filibuster, they're going to have to do it. But here's the thing. You don't have the votes at this moment. Manchin and Sinema are both no's. Even some of the soft no's that you had that have turned to yeses, I don't know that's going to be enough. It's going to be, again, it's all about Manchin. And what's interesting is the Republicans understand that it is all about Manchin, and they're really trying to put the charm offensive on, if you will. In fact, John Cornyn, the Republican senator from Texas, said on Tuesday that he had reached out to Joe Manchin via text, I guess, to encourage him to become a Republican, because we know what happens then. The majority goes to the Republican side. We got Mitch McConnell back as majority leader, and some bad things. He said, quote, Joe, if they don't want you, we do. But he claimed he hadn't heard back. He went on to say, I don't know what he will do, what he'll decide to do, but I know West Virginia has gotten increasingly red, so yeah, we'd love to have him. That would change the majority. Now, here's the thing, and this is why I don't believe Manchin will change, because he is now, he's the most popular, not most popular, he's the most recognizable, most powerful, most sought after. He's at the front of every discussion, on the tip of every tongue. He's basically co-president. He becomes a Republican, well, then he's nothing really. He's hated by both sides, which I find interesting. But it is what it is. Some interesting news. Fox News Corp, the owner of Fox News, they have told their employees in New York City that they're going to have to show proof of their vaccination status, at least one dose by December the 27th. And I guess they're removing the option of being tested. So they're saying and this goes back to what I've been saying all along, capitalism is going to have to figure this out. Fox News is saying, listen to what I'm telling you. While they're out there blathering about how this is wrong and how they're out there, their mouthpieces are out there, pushing this don't nonsense. Their bosses are saying, put up or shut up. Their bosses are saying, you're going to do it. There's no testing. There's no religious exemption. You do it. Now, what I found interesting in reading through the story is that as of this moment, Fox is saying that more than 90% of their employees currently today are vaccinated. And it's an interesting kind of position, considering that they're kind of the leaders in the promoting of the anti-vax nonsense, the anti-mask, all of this. They're the ones pushing this. Oh, we need our freedom. Kind of ridiculous. Now, interesting question posed by the Washington Post. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. The radio guy, Bongino, the former FBI guy, he had threatened to quit his show before. He had threatened if he had to get the mandate, if he had to get vaccinated, he was going to leave. Why hasn't he quit? Or, I got to ask, has he been vaccinated? And just not bothered telling anyone. Now, I know he had COVID, and I know he had struggled through some rough times with it. In fact, he was constantly thanking listeners for caring that he was sick. Has he been? I don't know. And what happened to that? And will this change any of that? I'm not sure. I got an email that I wanted to get to real quick from Ben from Chicago. Ben, listening on WCPT 820 there in Chicago. He said, I heard your statement that the economy is doing well for most people the other day, especially the wildly wealthy, and I could not agree more. No president in their first year even compares to Biden's success. That's a pretty hefty statement, Ben. And he goes through and he says, look, we are ranked number 1 or number 2 in each of the these 10 key measures. GDP, gross domestic product, he says we're number one. Profit growth, corporate America not happy, very happy with this, number one. S&P 500 performance, number two. Consumer credit, number one. Non-farm payrolls, number two. Manufacturing jobs, number two. Business productivity, number two. Dollar appreciation, number two. And S&P 500 relative performance, not 100% sure what that is, but he says number two there. He also points out that the American Rescue Plan cut child poverty by 50% and has helped us recover faster from the pandemic than virtually every other nation on the planet. He says that Biden has reduced the jobless rate to 4.2%. He said companies are investing, consumers are spending, things are good. He said the clear message, and this is the interesting part of this, the clear message is from the market is that they are betting on the Biden economy. And you may remember, with the death of the Build Back Better plan, you had Goldman Sachs downgrading their view for next year. And this is where I think Ben's right. And I don't know what Ben does, and thank you for the response, Ben. But the moneyed interests, the Wall Street and those folks, they're betting on an economy where government is actually consuming, where we're actually getting people things that they need, we're actually investing in the future. And you go, wow, that's all wasteful spending. And I disagree. The Build Back Better plan would have been smart investments. The bipartisan infrastructure plan, hugely important, smart investments. Things that we have needed for decades and not even enough. The American Society of Civil Engineers says we need right now, this moment, today, to get to the even, to just to get even. We need over, what was it, $4.6 trillion? What was the bipartisan plan? 1.2? And of that, I think only like 500 million of it was new. And look, historic. I love the fact that we got a good number. It's a good start. But let's not get crazy and think that, oh my gosh, it's the end of humanity because we had the audacity to invest in the future. We have allowed our infrastructure to basically crater. And we need massive improvements. We need the future improvements. And this is what it comes with yesterday. I would love to see a lot of co-ops pop up. I would love to see a lot of working people go, you know what, we can pave those roads, we can build those wind farms, we can do the things that need to be done. We can build the broadband. One of the things that I'm not thrilled with in that is we didn't say with the broadband expansion that we're going to make it a public good. I would have loved nothing more than to tell communities, you know what, expand broadband access in your communities. And you control it. So that all of the money that goes into it stays into it and is reinvested in it and is made better as technology changes. So we don't have to go another couple of decades and go, oh, well, gee, it was state of the art, 25 years ago. Dial-up was state of the art 30 years ago. You got dial-up internet right now? You're about ready to find a bridge. Let's hope that it isn't crumbling. And this is the part that gets me. I mean, there's so much we should be doing. And we've got such a dysfunctional government on every level. And that is by design. The moneyed interests do not want a united working class. So they set these fires. They set these situations where people are constantly at each other. Because they know if we ever did unite around a common idea of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that everyone should have the right to a job, that everyone should have the right to decent health care, access to a good quality education, that every child should be able to go as far as their talents will take them, and pursue the things that FDR wanted, where people were free from want and need, and that we really pushed forward to make all of us better off. What would that mean for the rich? What would the wealthy get? Because you don't have exploitable people anymore. And look, I don't have anything against people doing well. I want everyone to do well. I had someone accuse me the other day of saying, "Why you just hate rich people?" No, I hate obscene wealth. That I hate a system that is rigged against working people. I hate a system that encourages the wealthy to hide their wealth and to cheat on their taxes and not worry about being caught. And also by a political system that says, don't worry about it. You don't need to help out. We can just put it on a credit card. And then telling us that we should be crazy about our national debt, of which I'm always concerned about. But we are the wealthiest country in the history of civilization in its wealthiest moment. I'm pretty sure we can, if we were to put our heads to it, we could figure out our problems. And that is exactly what the wealth class does not want. They don't want us figuring out our problems because that means they're going to have to chip in. That means we're going to have a tax code like we used to. You go back to the good socialist president, Dwight David Eisenhower, a Republican president who said that anyone who would come out against a farm bill or labor laws or Social Security or unemployment, they would never be heard from in their political history. Their numbers are negligible, and they're stupid, the ones that think they can. Stupid is running the Republican Party at this moment and running the rest of the country into the ground over it. Look, we didn't just wake up one day and go, oh my gosh, the Republican Party is crazy. This has been 50 years in the making. This has been, Powell memo forward. This has been Reaganomics. This has been all of the things that they've brought to us over these decades. This has been a slow boil. And we've now finally hit the end of the road where there are some of us who have gone, hey, we've been telling you this is coming for a long time, going, it's here. And other people who just drank the Kool-Aid. Because they've been so blinded by their hatred for others. Fear, anger, and hatred, those are that's the heroin, that's the opium of destroying the masses. If you can keep people afraid of each other, if you can keep people angry at each other, you can keep people hating each other, you can make sure that they're never going to do well. And this is where we are, sadly. And the right does a masterful job of feeding the outrage candy. I remember after we were getting out of Afghanistan, and look, I'm not thrilled with the way that happened overall. But given the circumstances that we were in, it was the best outcome that I think you could have expected, given the reality of where Biden was. Because Biden was right. You had two choices. You were either going to do what we did and get out, or you were going to have to escalate. And we'd probably be there another 20 years. Trump put him in an untenable position. But the day that we were getting out, one of the right-wing mouthpieces, one of the big outrage candy feeders, one of the guys pedaling the bike, came out with, what about the dogs? It was all about the poor puppies that we left behind and how Joe Biden hated dogs and all of this stuff. And they were just crazy about it. They were on it for about I guess it was probably like 15 hours. It was everything. It was everywhere. Everybody was on it. They were all on message. All of the bot farms, all of the troll farms, all of the hacktivists, all of them were all on it. I was getting just inundated with, you hate puppies and dogs. Oh, you dog hater. And then it was gone because they went on to the next outrage. They went on to the next fear candy. They went on to the next outrage candy to get people all riled up. Because look, eventually you kind of have a down. It's like any drug. You get that high and you're euphoric and you're whatever, you're at the top of it. And then it kind of wanes down. And then it kind of isn't that important anymore until the next thing. And then this is what they've done to our parents and grandparents. That's what they've done to a generation of voters And the younger generations, they just bought and paid for. And the question is can you reach them? Because I've had conversations with people going, I don't know how we see the exact same thing, and there are such different realities. And I don't know how you see things that aren't there. When I look at our inner cities, I see some problems. I see poverty. I see things that we should be doing to make lives better, probably because of where I grew up. I don't see people to be afraid of. I don't see lazy people. I don't see people who are trying to rip me off. I see those folks in corporate offices. I see those folks who are capitalists. Now, I look at Benny's response about our economy. Our economy's been doing fairly well for a good number of people, especially the folks at the top. You look at, from the beginning of the pandemic, I think it was Americans for Tax Fairness. They came out and said, what it was like $2.8 trillion in wealth was accumulated in our billionaire class during the pandemic. That's obscene. And yet there's no additional tax on that to help people who are struggling. And there are people who are struggling. And because of policy, and interestingly enough, Trump policy, that $250 a month, that was Trump's idea. That was their doing, and I give them credit for that. That was a great thing. But ultimately, it still did come from a conservative idea. And if conservatives actually understood their ideology and actually understood the history of their ideology, they might have known that. And then maybe they wouldn't have been against it. But I guess, that's a bit too much to ask, isn't it? I guess it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally, and as I said yesterday, except the dumb ones. And there, you know who you are. So don't be surprised if you don't get a response, because if you meant it stupidly, that's what you're going to get back. But I'm going to take a quick break right here. On the other side, some interesting union news. Stick around. Right back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the Anaconda Copper Company instituted its rustling card system at its mines in Butte, Montana. The company used the rustling cards in two ways. First, as a work permit, and then as a way to keep track of miners. A miner looking for work would first have to apply for a card. Miners had to present information about citizenship status, English literacy skills, work history, and 2 years of employer references. Once the card was approved, the miners would then be allowed to apply for work. The Butte Miners Union charged that it was the company's way of blacklisting those who had quit, been fired, or known as union militants. By 1917, the Metal Mine Workers Union and the IWW added that the company was looking to nip agitation in the bud. They alleged employers were holding onto cards or denying them altogether for no reason. According to historian Paul Brissenden, both unions maintained the company was looking to, quote, punish those who were at one time active in the socialist administration of Butte Mayor Lewis J. Duncan, to prevent the Socialist Party from again securing a foothold in Butte, to strengthen the hands of the more conservative unions, and to curb the industrial unionism of the IWW and Metal Mine Workers Union. The company asserted its right to keep out its enemies out of the mines, alleging they presented a danger to mine safety. But the unions shot back, stating the blacklist meant the hiring of untrained, inexperienced workers who presented the real danger. Brissenden notes that many union radicals continued to work in the mines despite the card system.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, a quick shout out to the some 1,400 BCTGM members spanning across Michigan, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. They had been on strike since October 5th. It looks like they've ratified their contract in what I guess it appears to be somewhat reasonable. I've seen some bits and pieces. Their president, Anthony Shelton, president of the Bakery, Confectionery, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union, said, our striking members at Kellogg's ready-to-eat cereal production facilities courageously stood their ground and sacrificed so much in order to achieve a fair contract. This agreement makes gains and does not include any concessions. They say it's a 5-year contract. There are across-the-board wage increases in the first year, cost of living adjustment in year one, expanding some health care, retirement benefits, a good thing. They say no takeaways, no concessions, none of that. They're saying no permanent two-tier system, but I'm not so sure from what I've been hearing. So we'll see what comes out of that. Also, there's nothing on the forced overtime, which was the other issue. But all in all, look, I think at this point, not a bad agreement. And we'll see how that goes. There were some other good things in there, pension increases, and maintenance of the cost of living agreement. So there you go. Now for me, I got to wonder, to be honest, I have to wonder how much the permanent replacement threat by Kellogg played into this. But like I said, from somebody who's an outsider, it looks like a reasonable agreement. Take the win. Take the W when you can get it. Also, our friends, our nurse friends up in Worcester, Massachusetts at St. Vincent's Hospital, they're returning to work. That's a great thing. Our Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, brokered that deal, so they are back on the job. Good for them. And when you get these wins, you got to celebrate them. But here's the thing. Now we've got over 3,000 graduate and undergraduate student workers at Columbia University who I believe have been on strike since November the 3rd. And they're striking, as a lot of people do, for better wages, hours, and conditions, of course. But the other thing that I find interesting in there, they're looking for a third-party arbitration system to deal with harassment and discrimination complaints, something I understand is rampant there. And here to share some thoughts on why they're on strike, what they're asking for, and in which way we should be looking at. I've asked Imogen Wilson to come talk with us. Imogen is a rank-and-file member of the Student Workers of Columbia, UAW Local 2210. Imogen, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So walk me through. Has this been November 3rd, right?
Yeah, so, we're entering our 8th week of the strike, which is a long time to be on strike, more than half of the semester. We're all, PhD students and master's students, and we're people who also teach undergrads as well. So we're striking from our teaching responsibilities. And yeah, like you said, it's for all the things that you would expect, really. Like some of the big ticket items are improved healthcare insurance and dental insurance. We currently don't have any access to dental. A wage that comes at least a little closer to meeting the cost of living in New York City. And yeah, like you said, a really important one for us is access to neutral arbitration in cases of discrimination and harassment.
So who are the members of the Student Workers Union? Because I've had a lot of people over the years, and we've talked to workers at universities across the country, and the first thing that pops up is you're students, you're not workers. Explain to me the difference.
Well, I guess if you think of a professor who works at a university, right? Like half of their time will be teaching and half of their time will be doing research. And it's the same for us. So we're mostly PhD students, and we spend about half of our time teaching undergrads, and the other half doing our dissertation research and writing our work. So we're both. We're students and workers. It is complicated.
No, it isn't. But at the end of the day, if you're doing work for the university and they're benefiting from it, because as I understand, most.
Oh my gosh, hugely. I mean, undergrads pay around $60,000 a year. to attend Columbia, and so many of their classes are taught by us, and we make less than living wage. It's crazy.
No, it is crazy, but one of the arguments, and I just want to get this out of the way because I know there are people out there going, well, you're getting the education free, and this came up during the Trump tax code stuff as well, as I remember. All of this kind of throws into this, so I want to make sure that people understand that you guys actually do a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's a huge amount of labor. And I think, we do get some of our, PhD fees covered or whatever. But at the end of the day, anyone who's working should have access to all the stuff that we want, regardless of, the situation surrounding their work, their background, all of that stuff.
Right.
Everyone deserves a living wage, and everyone benefits from these strikes winning, right?
No, I'm with you. And I wish you guys the best, and I hope this turns out well, because when you do better, students at another university hopefully will do better, and we make a more egalitarian, better system for everyone. But I look at the school's endowment, and I'm $14.3 billion. Is that right?
I think it might even be 14.4 billion. Yeah, and it went up around 3 billion in the last year or so during the pandemic. So when the university claims that they don't have enough money to meet all of our demands, all of our demands over the next 3 years will cost something like $150 million, which sounds like a lot of money. But in the context of 3,000 workers and Columbia's $14 billion endowment, it's really not a lot at all.
Yeah, it's almost sounds like a rounding error when you look at the big numbers that you're really talking about there.
Yeah, but as you know, a lot of the time, these things aren't really about the money. I think we're in a unique position in that a lot of graduate workers don't have access to unions or this kind of strike or this kind of campaign. And Columbia doesn't want to set a precedent, right, of giving us the things that we are asking for, because all of the other universities will follow and do the same.
Yeah. So they're willing to burn down the house, or as I guess they've threatened you as well, much like Kellogg threatened their employees. They threatened to permanently replace all you guys, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, they did. It remains to be seen if that will happen. I really hope it doesn't. But yeah, that would be one way of them ending the strike. If they stopped us, if they took away our teaching responsibilities, we would no longer be workers, and then I guess the strike would end by default. But I really hope it doesn't come to that and we reach a contract before then.
Yeah, and if people wanted more information, you guys have got a website, studentworkersofcolumbia.com, goes through some of the bargaining. And I guess you guys have been going through a kind of a rapid, bargain-a-thon these last couple of days, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been in mediation for hours and hours a day. We're working with a mediator, but we've also been meeting with the university, and we are getting closer. But the thing that has been really difficult to watch during the strike has been how much the university is unwilling to budge on our asks around discrimination and harassment. Seemingly without real reason.
Right.
Because at the moment, say if you have an advisor that is either sexually harassing you or bullying you, making things difficult for you in your career, at the moment all you can do is make a complaint to the university, and then they will probably decide that nothing is wrong and make it go away, sort of in secret. And everyone deserves access to a transparent and fair process when it comes to things like that.
And, the reason I was going to bring this up, because, this is one of those things that you don't often talk about, but I think is important, not just for you guys as student workers, but also in the regular workplaces across this country where this kind of stuff still happens. I don't think it happens as much as maybe it used to, but still does happen.
Oh, yeah, I think it happens. I think it happens a whole lot. And in these big institutions, Columbia is a massive company, basically, and some employees have access to different kinds of HR that we don't, because we're sort of workers when it suits Columbia and students when it suits Columbia, because if we were having a problem with our advisor, we wouldn't really have access through HR in the same channels that other employees might, because they would say that in that case we're students.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Imogen Wilson. She's a rank-and-file member of the Student Workers of Columbia, UAW Local 2210. You can check out their website, studentworkersofcolumbia.com, and get a little bit more information on what they're doing. Now, you brought up that Columbia is a company, and we often don't think of universities as businesses or companies. One of the things that that kind of came across my desk that made me rethink a little bit about the situation of student workers like you is that it's almost like the old school company towns where they have basically all the cards of not just your employment, but your health care, your living facilities, virtually everything. So to me, this is another interesting component of this discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Columbia is, if not the biggest, at least one of the biggest landowners in New York City. And so many of our members live on campus housing, and Columbia is their landlord. They set like the prices that they pay for rent, and we're completely in Columbia's pocket. So when they threaten to replace our labor, like, it throws everyone's lives in disarray. You know, it's difficult to think about how we would carry on. And everyone I know, if they lost their wages from teaching, would have to drop out of the PhD programs.
And you look at this and you go, a lot of the people that I've known who've gone on through these programs say that, they need these programs to be able to get the degrees that they have, but that it should be made easier. You should be paid better for your time. And it might encourage other people to pursue these kind of degrees, because we're told we need smart people in this country.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different types of smart people. But yeah, I don't think people should be discouraged from doing a PhD and, spending a lot of time becoming an expert on something and having a subject that they're really passionate about, that they want to share with the world. And that shouldn't be sort of punishable and paid unfairly.
So how can people help? I mean, I look at this and I go, I want to help. What can we do to help?
Well, you can check out what we're doing on social media, the SWC Columbia, like Twitter and Instagram accounts, which is where we post what's going on. One of the main ways that people can help, if they would like to, is by contributing to our hardship fund, which has been keeping us all afloat when we've been without wages for the last 2 months. And covering our emergency costs and things, and those are all on our socials. At the moment, we have a very cool art auction going on. There's been some really amazing pieces donated, so if anyone's interested in buying some art, they can support us that way.
No, I've been watching what you guys have been doing in that vein, the virtual art thing and the the virtual picket lines and the things that you've been doing to try and get people involved. And it's interesting to watch a younger generation of activists use the tools at their disposal to push what those of us in the old days would just walk with a picket sign around a barrel of burning wood.
Oh, well, we've been doing a fair amount of that too. Not necessarily with the burning wood, but we've been out on the picket every day. People have been out on the pickets every day. But yeah, we are striking in a pandemic after all. So we've got to make use of people being at home and doing like online campaigning and Zoom campaigning and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we can participate in the virtual pickets now.
Yeah, we totally can. And it's meant that the bargaining process has been able to be quite transparent too, because we've been able to open the meetings on Zoom to any members who want to attend, which has been great.
Well, that is great, and so we're hoping soon this comes to an agreement. Do we have any sense of where this is going?
We're hoping really soon. I mean, some days it seems like it will be very soon, and then there's a setback. I mean, you know how these things go, but I hope in the next couple of weeks or the next 3 weeks, at least before the start of the spring semester. Right. That would be great.
What kind of response are you getting from the students, from your students, the people that you're teaching in these classes?
I mean, it's complicated. They are supportive of the strike, but very rightfully, they are cross that they're spending a lot of money on their education and they're not getting taught. And they should be crossed. I mean, it's supposed to be disruptive. I guess that's the strike working. But most of the students I've spoken to have been really, really supportive. And, us teaching them that fighting for good working conditions and social justice is a very important lesson too. So they're getting that from us in a different way.
No, and I say it all the time. This is where you get your PhD in working class economics. You got to walk those picket lines.
Absolutely.
Imogen, I appreciate you taking time for us. Keep up the fight. One day longer, one day stronger. I wish you guys the best.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Make sure you check out their website, studentworkersofcolumbia.com. We'll get links out on social media on how you can do just that. But no, the fact that they have to go this route is kind of crazy when you think about this university that has such enormous wealth. I mean, monstrous wealth. These endowments in the billions, $14.5 billion is what I saw. And I'm going, how is it that you're saying, sorry, we can't pay you a living wage for doing the work of professors in a major institution in this country? Now, the problem is, and this is the problem is these universities have gotten so used to being able to abuse these workers and use these adjuncts to be able to undercut any type of reasonable requests for decent living that they've gotten used to. They've set up their model on it. They've set up their education model on exploitation. And this is where the kind of organizing that these workers have done in these universities, and it's not just Columbia, it's a bunch of them across the country. And I think the UAW has been one of the unions that's really been out on the forefront, pushing to organize these education workers. I just find it quite remarkable. And, look, I can understand the kids being a little cross, to use her word. The parents probably a little bit more. But, this is where the university should be held accountable. And I think the first call should not be to the union and saying, why aren't you back at work? But to the quote-unquote company. Why aren't you helping these people? Why aren't you trying to attract the best and the brightest? Seems simple to me. But I wish them the best, especially during this holiday season. And like she said, hopefully things will get back to normal before the next semester, and they'll win a good contract and the arbitration thing, which I hadn't even really thought of in the context of an education worker. Thinking back to my days in college, the professors who had people under them always abused them. Interesting. But again, I wish them the best. I'm going to take a quick break right here. When we come back and talk a little bit about the Omicron viral blizzard coming, as we're seeing it just explode across the country. Is it a big deal? Are we going to see shutdowns? Are we going to see, people leaving the medical field? When we come back, our good friend Dr. Keith Pochick going to be here to share some thoughts on his experience and what's going on around the country. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day that Red Scare deportations began. 249 radicals, including anarcho-feminist Emma Goldman, were packed onto the USS Buford and deported to Russia. The year of 1919 had seen massive social convulsions. The Seattle General Strike had kicked off the year. It was followed by coal strikes and steel strikes, bombings, and race riots. There were increasing fears of communist ideas and influences in the wake of the Bolshevik Revolution. These events touched off a draconian response by the U.S. federal government. Together with the young J. Edgar Hoover, Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer conducted mass raids and arrests of more than 1,000 suspected working-class radicals. The Department of Labor agreed that proclaimed membership in the Union of Russian Workers was a deportable offense. The ship set sail and docked in Finland, where trains
trains transported the deportees into the Soviet Union. The vast majority of those deported had no criminal records and had never participated in any acts of terrorism. They were expelled for speaking out about their political opinions. According to Regan Schmidt, author of Red Scare, FBI, and the Origins of Anti-Communism in the United States, employers' associations fueled the anti-radical climate. They were engaged in an intense open-shop counterattack against post-war organizing campaigns and strike activity. The main goal was to discredit unions as subversive, Bolshevistic, and alien to basic American values. Donning the name The American Plan, closed shops were referred to as Sovietism in disguise, and propaganda campaigns were waged to ensure blacklists, internal union dissension, yellow dog contracts, and strike breaking.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Ohio State Representative Casey Weinstein tweeted out today, was just briefed by a major hospital network CEO. It's not just that we're beyond capacity. The facilities of their unvaccinated patients the families of their unvaccinated patients are attacking caregivers for not giving them the right meds and quack treatments. He says 25 incidents every day in Ohio of these people attacking healthcare workers. And you just got to go, at what point do people just go, I'm done? And if you saw that Reddit post the other day of the doctor who was attacked in the parking lot when someone passed away, unvaccinated, and the family didn't believe it, you just go, no wonder people are leaving the healthcare field. And here to share some thoughts on the Omicron, what this could mean. Is this the end? Are we again going to have another shutdown spike? Is it going to be bad? Or maybe do we get through it? I've asked our good friend Dr. Keith Pochick to share some thoughts. Dr. Keith, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me back, Rick. I appreciate it.
So, I'm looking at you. You don't look all that great. I understand you are one of the Omicron folks as we speak.
I am, and I never look all that great. So, probably this is just me normal. I basically feel like I have a cold. I've been sick for about 3 days, and I'm up here. Fortunately, we have an Omicron leper lair that we could convert in my house, and that's where I am right now. And I have an exercise bike and a TV, and I've caught up on movies, and I'm caught up on emails and reading books. And don't tell my wife that it's kind of like a vacation, because the rest of the family is negative. And honestly, I really credit a lot of that to the fact that I've had 2 vaccines and a booster, and despite the fact that I'm 44 years old and have high blood pressure and I'm carrying extra pounds, knock on wood, I'm gonna be okay. There are a lot of tea leaves out there that we can try to read on what Omicron's gonna mean and how it's gonna go in the U.S. and is it less severe? Is it more contagious? And I think that we can't put all of our eggs in we're just gonna hope everything's gonna be okay basket, because we've been burned by that so many times.
Yeah, but from early indications, it's the unvaccinated who are in trouble. In fact, I guess in Texas, they just had the first person pass from the Omicron, and lo and behold, they weren't vaccinated. So this, I think, will be a repeated scenario over and over and over again. This will be the message going forward for a bit.
I think so, and I think that we've kind of trailed behind for a few weeks of what's going on in Europe. What's going on, particularly in the UK, over the course of the entire pandemic. And if you look what's happening there, the numbers just shot up almost vertically on an exponential scale when Omicron hit. and then they're starting to fade already. Like, so it seems like this is going to be potentially the biggest wave from a case number standpoint, but also the shortest lived wave. And hopefully that's the way things go.
Right. So does this now become the norm where we get the next wave? It isn't as deadly as it once was because we are developing treatments. There are things that are helping. Oh, I don't know, like getting vaccinated. Just kind of throwing that out there. I think getting vaccinated. I've heard that could help. Is that accurate?
The numbers would certainly be on your side there, Rick, that getting vaccinated is going to prevent you from having to be admitted to the hospital and prevent you from dying of COVID. And that's just, you just run into this propaganda machine of, well, if the vaccines work, then why am I, who's vaccinated and boosted, why do I have likely Omicron COVID? That means the vaccine's not effective. Well, no, that's not what it means at all. I'm very unlikely to get sick. I'm very unlikely to require hospital admission. I'm very unlikely to die, knock on wood, of this. And that's, that's borne out by observational science. And that's, that's the enemy of rhetoric, but then again, it can't quite combat a skull that's hardened by rhetoric. It can't penetrate that skull, and that's just sort of the, that's sort of where we are.
Yeah.
You know this with where you live, and I know this with where I live.
And unfortunately, you are vaccinated. Unfortunately, you're not going to end up in the hospital, and unfortunately, you're not going to die. This way, your wife won't have to go beating up the doctor in a parking lot. Which you hear these stories, you see these stories, and now look, what I have been talking about this stuff almost from the beginning, and I'm amazed that people have, I saw it on Google, someone on Facebook told me that they know more than the doctor who's treating my loved one. I'm amazed every time I hear this story that someone believes that a little horse dewormer and some vitamin C is all you need to snap you right out of things.
Well, and one way, I don't want to say convenient way, away from this of angry, belligerent families who don't feel like they're getting enough vitamin C or don't feel like they're getting enough ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or whatever, is that, hey, we're in a hugely contagious new stage of the pandemic with a new variant, so we're going to limit visitation again. And that's one potential strategy that protects healthcare workers from abuse. And the other thing is that the healthcare administration has got to step up and say, hey, look, we have a zero tolerance policy for this crap. We're not going to tolerate it with our staff who's already overburdened, overworked, has already by and large suffering tremendous amounts of PTSD at this point. As we move into year 3 of this pandemic, we're just not going to tolerate it anymore. Just the workers to be able to feel that degree of support, I think would mean a lot. And there are a couple easy outs here, like I mentioned before.
Yeah, no, I spent some time in a hospital, in an ER recently with a relative, and the ER was full. There were people. Evidently, they had split the ER into two. Half were COVID patients, and half were others. Whatever their ailments were, and I didn't go and take a poll. But I was led to believe that half was COVID, half was not, and they had the magic barrier between them, just air. There was a magic barrier there. And what I found interesting is most of the people who were sitting in the ER were sitting there because they had nowhere else to put them. They had no rooms. When you went back to where the rooms for the ER were, those were all full. People were sitting in hallways. It was horrible. And I asked one of the people who were there on the COVID side if they were vaccinated, and she gave me this look like, "Are you insane? I would never do that," she said. And I'm going, let me know how that works out for you.
No, it is, and it's sad, and it makes you realize that there's a certain percentage of the population at this day and age in America that you just may never get back. You may never convince that this is real science. This is fact. This is borne out. This is truth. We really are. We're living in parallel universes, which is awful. And it's hurting people, and it's driving healthcare workers in particular. I mean, and you've seen this across, the spectrum of various different sectors of labor, but healthcare workers in particular, it's just driving people away completely out of their profession that they've spent a lot of time and money and years and, blood and sweat and tears getting there.
Yeah. I don't know how they do it. Thank goodness they do. But I don't know how they do it. Now, I'm sure you've seen the Fox News guy, Jesse Waters, comments over the last day of ambushing and kill-shotting Dr. Fauci, and the kind of rhetoric that's brought up. Now I know they're gonna say, no, Rick, you're misrepresenting what he said. He was talking about going and getting him on camera. I don't believe that. I believe that that's what he wants. He's just using the cover of, oh no, we'll just put it on film. I believe these people want violence, and they want violence on people that don't agree with them. And I fear for our healthcare workers who this kind of violence happens to because of the rhetoric of people like Jesse Waters.
Oh, me too. I mean, it's absurd to think that you gin up a mob of ideal, I guess. What are you going to call them? I guess just rhetoric hardened ideologues who then you expect to interpret nuance in a statement. I mean, that's just not the way things work. They want to say, hey, no, what we meant is we're going to get him with a gotcha question. Okay, that's what we meant the entire time. But you use this just incredibly emotionally charged rhetoric, and then expect that to lead to violence. I mean, the same things happened in Congress when you talk about some of the attacks on Ilhan Omar, or some of the other House representatives and things like that. I mean, it's we're in a very dangerous environment. Healthcare workers are at the tip of the spear in a lot of ways, and even that aspect of it.
No, because what I worry about is, at some point I may need healthcare in another realm. And if they're not there, that's a problem. And look, we're seeing reports all across the country of our hospitals filling up. And that's always been the concern in this. It's always been the concern that we're going to overtax our healthcare system, and we're not going to be able to take care of not only the people who get COVID, but all of the other things. And look, we have lost over 800,000 people to COVID. I got to wonder how many other people lost their lives because the resources weren't there and they weren't treated quick enough, or there was nowhere to send them. They had to go 3 states to find a bed. I got to wonder, is anyone tracking that?
I mean, that's a wonderful question. And I think that number is certainly significant. It's hard to think that that's not in the tens or hundreds of thousands. And this was a problem even before COVID hit. That hospitals and emergency departments were completely overburdened and understaffed, and had inadequate facilities, and there were psychiatric holds there that were there for days and maybe even up to a week, who were occupying beds, and this was all pre-COVID. So I mean, this was a crisis before COVID hit, and then COVID hits, and it all of a sudden now it's exponential to where it was even before. It's opened eyes. Maybe that's a good thing, but where do we actually go from here? I'm not sure. Yeah. And I worry about just the health of healthcare teams and healthcare workers, because there are some incredible things that we can do. And I think that a lot of us just suffer almost a mental or emotional injury or crisis when we can't deliver what we know we could deliver if circumstances were what they should be. Right.
Last question I've got for you real quick. The president came out today with the plan to move forward. Lots of testing. I guess he bought $500 million rapid test kits, going to give those out. Is that going to be helpful?
I think so. I think it will. One of the major limitations I think that I would pull up on that is that these are in all likelihood going to be, well, they'll be rapid antigen tests, which are good, and they're portable and they're quick and they can be done at home, and they have fairly good results with one exception. If you're just exposed, or if you're just doing the test because you want to travel or you want to go to an event, they're not very sensitive. Their sensitivity is much better if somebody is symptomatic, if they're having cough, congestion, fever, whatever, you think you have a cold and you just want to check and make sure before you go into work or whatever. The sensitivity is a lot better there, probably in the 70 to 80% range. But if you're asymptomatic and you're just trying to check and say, hey, I think I was exposed to someone, or I'm going to travel, or I'm going to go into a concert, the sensitivity there is more like 30%.
Oh.
So, I mean, we're going to have to interpret those test results in that light, and understand that if you're going into a crowd of people and you're not sure about your status, then you know what, you probably just need to put a mask back on again. I mean, it's not like it's that difficult of an ask.
Yeah, well, it's helpful. But again, we're still in a moment. We've got to do smart things. When half the country's crazy, I don't know that's all that possible. But Keith, I appreciate the time. It's always great talking with you. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you, Rick. Have a good night.
You as well. Our good friend, Dr. Keith Pochick. Look, I always love his advice, and I always love his take on things, because it is important. And look, somebody on the front lines of how this stuff goes. And like I said, there are these stories out there of doctors who are being assaulted by families who just tell them reality. And this is where that alternative reality stuff and reality come to collide. Imagine you're the doctor going to this family, and you like Keith said, you want to help, but these people didn't help themselves. So this 50-some-year-old guy in Texas is dying, and you go to the family and go, there's nothing I can do, and they have it in their head that no, this magic drug, and I'm not against giving them the magic drug. If you think that that's going to be helpful, I'm all in favor of giving it to them. You want to put battery acid and gasoline with lima beans in with it as well? Knock yourself out. But it's not going to be helpful. Interesting times ahead. But I'm hoping, Keith is right. I'm hoping we're going to see a big spike, but it's not going to be deadly, and it will dissipate quickly, and we'll get to the other side of it. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter @RickSmithShow, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe, like, share, all of that stuff. And thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Can antibiotic medicines, long hailed as miracle drugs, be too much of a good thing? Yes. Two factors are at work here. First, bacteria, one of the earliest forms of life on Earth, are miracles in their own right, with a stunning ability to outsmart the antibiotic drugs through rapid evolution. Second is the rather dull inclination of us supposedly superior humans to overuse and misuse antibiotic medicines. Every time we take an antibiotic to kill some bad bacteria that is infecting our bodies, a few of the infectious germs are naturally resistant to the drug. So they survive, multiply, and become a colony of superbugs that antibiotics can't touch. Multiply this colony by the jillions of doses prescribed for everything from deadly staph infections to the common cold, and we get the, quote, antibiotic paradox. The more we use them, the less effective they become. for they're creating a spreading epidemic of immune superbugs. A big cause of this is the push by drug companies to get patients and doctors to reach for antibiotics as a cure-all. For example, millions of doses a year are prescribed for children and adults who have common colds, flu, sore throats, etc. Nearly all of these infections are caused by viruses, which cannot, repeat, cannot be cured with antibiotics. Taking an antibiotic for a cold is as useless as taking a heart drug for heartburn. The antibiotics will do nothing for your cold, but it will help establish drug-resistant superbugs in your body. That's not a smart trade-off. This is Jim Hightower saying, in fact, it's incomprehensibly stupid. Antibiotics are invaluable medicines we need for serious, life-threatening illnesses, but squandering them on sore throats has already brought us to the brink of superbugs that are resistant to everything. That's the nightmare